So today is all about sketching nature. This is something I felt that I wanted to share because I spend a lot of time in my own practice sketching natural objects. Today I wanted to be a little bit more loose, a bit more sketchy as opposed to some of the kind of longer studies, but that's something I might look into sharing in the future, is how I go about doing a longer natural study. At the beginning of this video I just put the items that I use, the materials I use to make this little sketchbook study. I've just got a pencil, it's an old Derwent pencil I've got lying around, rubber because we all make mistakes, and I've got my Winsor & Newton paint palettes. I've got some natural brushes. I prefer natural hair, they last longer and they give you a better result, but you don't necessarily have to have that, as those are just the paint brushes I have. And lots of natural objects. I've also used a few colour pencils as well. I use Faber-Castell Polychromos, but again, that's what I have around, so that's what I use. But if you have something else, just whatever you happen to have lying around. Or you could even go out and grab, some actual natural pigments. You can actually make a green with a leaf, those kind of things. So be experimental and see what you can do. I started off just having a really quick sketch with some of the chosen objects I wanted to use. So I have a bit of an obsession about limpets, like holy limpets. I quite like collecting them, so they're always sitting on my desk. I thought they'd make a nice little start of how to get going. And then holy rocks as well, broken bits of shell, and I've also got some grasses and things I've collected on my walks as well. I tend to just start by getting a rough shape in. I sketch really, really lightly to start with, and then I go in slightly harder to start putting in some lights and darks. I'm really looking at the shape. This is a lot about observation and also sort of getting the idea of a feeling of what the object is you're drawing. So it doesn't have to, completely look like it. It just has to have some kind of essence of that object. After I'm sort of happy with my sketches, I tend to go in with a little watercolour wash. So the whole idea of this little study page is just to get an idea of some of the objects. This isn't a finished work, this is just sketching. So you can do this outside, you can be sat on a park bench, you can do it kind of wherever, and it doesn't have to be like a finished product. But it could be if you wanted it to be. If you really enjoyed something that you'd made or created, then you could have that as a sketch. You can take the page out and frame it. But for me, this is very much about a study. It's about getting back into observation, about looking, and about expressing that object. So here I decided to just go straight in with watercolour without sketching. I quite often really enjoy just using the brush to create the work rather than being really meticulous with a pencil. You can just sort of go in there and be a bit more experimental and free. After I've done some quicker studies, I quite often like to do a longer, more detailed study. As I said, it takes a bit longer, but you get a much more sort of realistic result and a much more detailed result. To do this, I start off in a very similar method with a light sketch, and then I work it in a very similar way. I'm just a lot more precise about the marks I make, the colours I use, and how I layer. use really small brushes when it comes to this. So this is a really tiny brush, but it means I can be really precise with the detail and really precise with which bit of colour I want there. One super duper tip is to let your layers completely dry before you go back in with more paint. You'll just be able to control the paint a lot easier rather than trying to do everything in one go. So as I got to this stage, I've already let the paint dry about 3 or 4 times. You can speed this up with a hairdryer, which is what I tend to do. It's not the best method, but it does make it a lot quicker when you're just trying to sketch. Obviously, if you're outside, you don't really tend to have a hairdryer with you, so just try and get it in the sun, and then the sun will dry that paint up really quickly. Once I'm happy with the watercolour layers, I tend to go in with a pencil. This allows me to add more depth and detail into certain areas. You can be really precise with a pencil, and it's a material I've just used a lot, so I know how it's going to respond and what to do with it. This is all just about practice. I use them so much that it becomes sort of second nature and how to manipulate them and work them. The pencils I'm using are Faber-Castell Polychromos and Caran d'Ache Luminance. They're both artist quality. You'll notice the point on that. I use a Derwent Super Point sharpener, but if you don't have that around and you're over 18, you can use a knife, and that's a really great way to get a lovely sharp point. The longer, the sharper the point on your pencil, the more precise and direct you can be. So I fancied giving that grass a little sketch. I did do an initial little light sketch with some pencil. Then I went in, this is a mop brush that I use to start with because it allows me to have a lot of paint on one go. A really big tip for using watercolours is to make sure that you've got enough of the paint, enough of that wash, the colour built up in your palette so that you don't run out, because by the time you've mixed it up, the first lot will have dried, so then you get streaks. So try and have as much of the colour sort of in one go as you can. Once I've got a fairly base layer down, I tend to go back in and deepen the shadows with a smaller brush. So this helps push the other colours forward. So in watercolour you want to work from lights to darks, so think about layering up colours to make other areas deeper. So for instance here you can see that I'm adding in that deeper brown, which recedes, pushing the lighter colours from the earlier layers forward. Also note the way that I'm using the brush. A lot of the time I'm following the same shape as the grass little spikes, so I'm kind of flicking the paintbrush up in a similar way. It's very gentle, it's quite subtle, but you can note that it's all directional. I don't go and scrub across. Continually referring back to the object is a must. You really need to have that object with you to be able to start sketching it and illustrating it, so that you can start to understand. Even if it's quite a loose sketch, I still recommend to have that object in front of you. And again, I went back in with a couple of different coloured pencils just to give it a bit more detail and a bit more intricacies in those little shadows. Makes it look quite sort of fluffy and soft. I also added a very gentle overlay with a green pencil, just because I felt I wanted to bring a little bit more of that greenish hue that the actual object had. So have fun, experiment, and have a play, and enjoy yourself and enjoy nature.